Okay, so there's a recent video that was released by Catholic Vote called Not Alone. It's basically an anti-same-sex marriage video where basically they come out and talk about how they're opposed to it and things like that. And on a lot of the commenters, I I understand that I'm not against gay marriage at all. I mean, I'm all for legalizing it. I think there should have been a referendum because that way it would have been a victory not just for the people but by the people as well. But anyway, but I read that on one of the comments that just because someone opposes same-sex marriage doesn't make them a bad person. So, I mean, I don't think same-sex marriage opponents are bad people, but I mean, I don't approve of the things they do, but I still don't think they're bad people. I mean, like, how would you treat an alcoholic? You wouldn't treat them like a bad person. They're just, you wouldn't approve of what they do, but they're not bad people. And that's likewise with same-sex marriage opponents, the opponents, we don't approve of their clinging on to that sort of hateful theory, but you know what? Uh, but you know what? They're not bad people. I think we should love the sinner and hate the sin. I also I also need to you ever seen the book Thief where the Liesel that girl and Rudy are part of the Hitler Youth, they they may have been part of something that was bad, but they weren't bad themselves, they were taught that this was the only way that you could go, There were no other alternatives to there were no other alternatives to other ways of there were no alternate ways of thinking, and that's how I kind of see same-sex marriage opponents, these when you're taught something as a kid and when you're taught something that young, it's very hard to reconsider it when you grow up. It's extremely hard because you're taught that this is the only way you can think. And a lot of the Catholics in that video obviously taught that you could only see marriage as between being a man and a woman, and that everything else was invalid. So I mean, it's not like their fault. It's their fault that they think the way they do. It's just their educators are the ones that are evil. The people that planted that evil seed in their minds. You know, they're being you know they're doing something bad. I mean, like they're doing something bad, no doubt, but that doesn't make them a that doesn't make them bad people. They're just doing, bad things. And the sad thing is, they probably don't even know it because they were taught it was okay to think that
It's
it was
9
only
o'clock.
between that marriage was only between a man and a woman. They were taught that it was they were taught that it was okay to believe that you could restrict gay marriage or restrict transsexual marriage or lesbian marriage or bisexual marriage or asexual marriage or gender fluid marriage or other kinds of LGBTQ marriages, They were taught that they were taught as a kid that you could that LGBT marriage was wrong, They it's not their fault they think the way they do. That this, I think that instead of seeing them as terrible KKK people, we should just see them as poor people who are trapped in their own outdated rhetoric, And I think that we need to pray for them and maybe hope that someday that God will be able to show them the light. He'll be able to show them the beauty of same-sex relationships or other LGBT relationships, and that they in fact can be marriage. And the church didn't even judge people's sex lives by by someone's orientation. They didn't judge before the Inquisition, but in the first 800 years of its existence, between 300 AD or so and the 1100s, they didn't judge people's sexual lives by what they were attracted to, That only became so during the Inquisition, and it would be all but too coincidental to think that that kind of policy, that the policy of only straight relationships being true is not inquisitional. It is inquisitional. And but before the Inquisition, people's sexual lives were judged by the types of acts they did that they did, and not by what they were attracted to. I mean, they obviously condemned so they obviously condemned acts like bestiality in their anti-sodomy texts, but not not gay relationships. And it allowed people of that time to be able to tolerate homosexuality as being in the same light as heterosexuality. So I'm so the belief that it is only and 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 like before the Inquisition, they did have the belief that that sex was only for procreation, but this was mainly limited to Christian writers and clergy. The same wasn't for their flock, though. So so restricting sex for the entire flock like this, to the extent that it does right now, it's been totally taken out of hand. It's not Christian, it's not traditional, and I don't see the acceptance of same-sex marriage as changing tradition at all. Actually, I think that it is evolving. It's a form of evolution rather than changing it, because the Christian traditions are based on Jesus, and those don't change. But what Christian tradition has done is it's evolved. Kind of like a kid when he or she becomes an adult. There'll always be people. The child will always be a person when he or she grows up, but they'll be bigger and stronger and better. And that's how I see Christian tradition. It's not. Yeah.